Hello, friends, and welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, Real Leaders Overcoming Real Crap. And today's conversation, I'm sure that you're going to just love. I had the privilege of being able to interview Kos Polosukhin out of the Ukraine, and very, very interesting story of resilience of a company whose employee base was in the Ukraine before and during this unfortunate conflict that's happening, the incredible resilience, the strategies, his lessons learned that he shared with us can be applied to any company, any group of people when they hit hardship and adversity. So much wisdom he shared. Just a really, really interesting adventure. So please enjoy his wisdom and the conversation. Thank you. Welcome and thank you so much for being here, Kos. We're really excited for this conversation.
Hi, Meg. Thank you for having me and thank you for inviting. And yeah, I'm really happy to share everything, I have. And yeah, let's get it
Well,
started.
yeah, I'm excited for our listeners to understand what you're doing, and then we can dive into your very, very interesting story. It truly is a story of resilience. But let's set the stage a little bit. So, can you give us a little bit of background about your company and the unique problems you're trying to solve, how you're solving them?
Right. So our company is the software developer for manufacturing industry and industrial segment primarily. We help, different stages of companies from the scale ups to the, enterprises of the mid-size to tackle, and solve complex integration challenges of software, customization of software, and merging this with the technology of today and tomorrow. So like artificial intelligence, and data-driven solutions. So things like that. And we are one-stop shop for such, implementations from, initial understanding of the problem to the actual implementation, mobile development all in place,
Mhm.
but we have this super niche focus on the industrial segment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And can you also talk about the kind of heart purpose driven portion of your work?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. That's the reason why I joined. That's the reason why our founders, started this what we call ecosystem. And it started from nonprofit organization. It was 2016, and our founders, Ukrainians, that time living for about 9, 10 years in California, came back to Ukraine to help somehow because our country was under a lot of pressure from 2014. And they started this nonprofit for giving IT, information technology education and background to orphans of college age, and quickly realized the fact, that they need some cohesive approach, to start a company to serve, for client needs and purpose. So our students can start their career rather than just have the education and not being on the street, right? Back like with the just diploma, or degree or something, right? Um, and that was, I would say, the most, intelligent and smart decision of that time, because it had this continuity for many people to transform their lives. And we have many students who now have families, and you can realize how it is for orphan to raise their kids, and build a good premise, and yeah, just, completely different life. So that's a little bit of the background, of the social impact. So every client, whom we help, it's not only a client for us, it's our friend and sponsor, for such programs of education. And that's what keeps us, very motivated, and resilient to
Mhm.
many things.
Yeah, so y'all are really more on the cutting edge of social impact and what I like to call double bottom line, right? Companies that have a lot of talent and skill and use it with their clients to make a profit, grow the company. but then also have that social impact where they actually partner with their clients and use some of their revenue and some of your expertise, right, in
Yes,
tech software development, to help these kind of emerging professionals in a really tough situation. So kind of double bottom line.
exactly. Exactly. And what we learned also that it's not only, you know that many companies, they try to do as best, to have whether social impact or climate change, improvements, or the charity, and sponsorship of many programs. We have this as a DNA. So this is our story, we started like that, and that's impact a lot of our decisions in the good way. We are much more, passionate about things and patient,
Mhm.
when it comes to like understand the human nature, that every human being has problems and challenges, right? And how to help and support, how to wait the time, rather than corporate type of culture when,
Mhm.
you simply can be, I would say, easier and faster on things to do rather than wait and train and educate.
Mhm.
So we have this in our DNA,
Yeah, awesome. So, when you and I were talking, you were helping me to understand some of the challenges that the company has gone through, considering um, just the political climate and all the struggles in Ukraine right now. And, in this podcast, we like to have real talk about the challenges that companies are facing, and yours is pretty unique. So, can you give us a little bit of a background about kind of, the company started, you had this talent strategy and
hmm
lots of employees in Ukraine. And then, frankly, shit hit the fan, right? So, talk to us a
Yes.
little bit more about what you all experienced.
Yeah. So I started in the peaceful time with the tents in the air. It was 6 months prior the February, 2022. And it was in the real term when you understand that, such work can happen in the 21st century. That was a lot of speculation in the media of that time. Can it happen? Cannot it happen? Why? And obviously we felt, that our people are, have this tension and, obviously we felt probably about 3 months before, that action, not just planning, but actions are needed. So we kept their financial reserve, to make sure that we have opportunity to relocate people if this is, like a whole, storm all the country, right? And yeah, keep talking to people. So we kept, every week, every, day or 2 day, sync up, like, what you guys feel and what is the real concern, you have. And meantime, we got ready for the plans and, relocation and emergency type of situation. So, we got, transportation in place, we got the safer, mountain locations of that time, and then, yeah, it happened. It started, in February 20, February 22, right? And yeah, it was good that we planned that because
Hmm.
I know many companies who didn't, and they didn't have like this people first attention, or like financial reserves, and they struggled. Some were on our level, some were, relocating people too. And from emotional intelligence, what I can tell you strangely, what we learned the first days that in the face of the enemy, in the face of the big threat, people becoming like really helping each other, like from the true definition and core. All the misalignments kind of, fade away and people really, start being helpful, which is, a true definition, I think, of our human being nature. So every type, of what we call, like a bad side of like, human beings, like, chatting things, right, and stuff, it really, faded away. And that's what we learned the first lesson. So people can be resilient in the big threat event, but you need as a leader, of course, to be human, in such conditions and in any condition, be human and being understandable that this happened. And our clients was super responsive to us, and we obviously communicated with them before, like, yeah, in this event we have plan A, B, C, we had multiple stages of the plan, and that's how it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah, so cost, can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of what percentage of your employees were in the Ukraine when all the unrest and the conflict started? I'm sure it was pretty unreal to everyone. And it sounds like, so what percentage of your workforce was there? And then also,
Oh,
can
we
you
were
tell us,
100%.
oh, 100% in the Ukraine.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you give me also, it sounds like you've gone through some phases and you've learned different lessons along the way. The first phase is prepare and communicate. Be prepared, get ready for the worst, have the plans, have the reserve. And then also, when things start to actually happen and play out, communicate and really be focused on the human. Communicate with the people,
Yes.
communicate with your clients, right?
Hmm.
And be very human centered. And you kind of learned that people are incredibly resilient, especially in that short term. It's like everything else falls away, and everyone's priority is the survival
Yeah.
of the people in the company and the company itself. Then
Hmm.
tell us a little bit more about phases two or three or so on. Like this has been playing out for years, right? And so
Yes.
you've had
Yes.
these different phases,
Unfortunately,
different
yes.
approaches, and what lessons have you learned in those phases?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're now on almost year three, so it's getting close, unfortunately, to that. So yeah, I mean, in the short term, it works like that, right? So you over communicate, as a leader, and your team is your help. You need to be still understandable that some people can make what you can see as irrational decisions, but they are rational, actually.
Mhm.
Because they are in their family mode, and there are different circumstances. You never know them to 100%, and probably you shouldn't, because that's very, sensitive in some way. So then we learned in the near term that, for 1 year, it's kind of, when you have a strong culture initial, right? It's keep growing, so it doesn't go away. So the first year, probably to year and a half, we saw this, really great, assembly of the, team all together. And because again, everybody kind of already understood what is the nature of the war is, and the environment they are, right? And that you need to support each other in order to survive, right? But anyway, from emotional side, this kind of survival thing is like crippling a little bit, right? And for some, it is more than for others.
Mhm.
I mean, so what I would say is, we need to be probably in the understanding that some of the things we never, we cannot control 100%, and we need to cultivate this internal emotional intelligence before any type of events happening. And that's what we learned, during the course of now almost 3 years, that in the, once this, big threat kind of changes, it doesn't go away, right? Because we still have this but for on the emotional level, it kind of, okay, we know the environment, we know the difficulty and things. Kind of this human nature, comes back a little bit. What I mean, is like a standard type of approach, like motivation, or dismotivation, right? It's really, what you see in the stages. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so it sounds like the first year was almost this crisis survival driven, everyone in it together and
unity. Yeah.
unity. Yeah. And then in this next phase, right, you started
Hmm.
to see people get a little fatigued and go back to some behaviors that were maybe that seemed appeared irrational or unhelpful. What was the approach of leadership at that point in time? Like what was your approach to try and keep the culture aligned and keep supporting people, but you've still got your bottom line, you still have to get results. So
Right.
how did you approach that?
So, yeah, I would say that this was a traditional fatigue, like, so-called motivate me. type of nature, right? Because before we didn't need that, and I mean, people were self-motivated a lot. What we were doing is obviously, with our management, just scratching our heads a little bit, like, okay, what we can do, right? The problem in this stages and phases that you cannot implement probably about half of the percent of the traditional motivational techniques, like events, gathering, or setting the goals, KPIs, and things, because you understand that again, emotional intelligence and emotional level is lower than in the normal time, right? So obviously, we kept the practices of talking to people, proactive communication, like weekly to monthly gatherings and explaining and engaging into many activities, from pre-sale to the actual development and implementation. We started the Research and Development Center, which was a lot of interest with the cutting edge technology so people can get busy themselves, and that what gave them a good distraction and understanding that, real gravity is still here, right? And
Okay.
not to drift away. Then, we obviously were, working with management and teams directly, so they can work with them closer. And then that's where the emergence of good practice of like Hebron Health started. So we started doing events in the like very different approach. So healthy breakfasts, the coaches of the, mental health, meditation. Then we also added like yoga practice, which was, offline in the office, but combining with the online experiences. So that's the evolutionary steps we started because, we understood like that it's deeper than traditional like managerial type of approach. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like, you hit this next phase, and I think a lot of executives, a lot of companies would not have gone in the direction of innovation and research and development. Let's do new, exciting things, even though our people are completely exhausted and we're trying to motivate them. But that actually inspired and motivated people. It made them recommit to the company to see that you
Hmm.
were doing things that were cutting edge, even amidst
Right.
all this adversity, right? And then you
Yeah.
really doubled down on your approach of paying attention to the human side of things by having the Hebron Health program, the meditation, that right, like helping people tune into their own mental, emotional health and take care of their mental health.
Yeah.
I really love the idea of somebody coming on screen with me at work and facilitating meditation or yoga. Like, I would love to
It
have that
it's a
happen.
lot
And
of fun. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And truth, because your podcast is about, hard truths, I was always skeptical about yoga. Always. Like I felt that, it changes people, dramatically, they becoming probably less, motivated, less being on this earth to say so, right? But this events and circumstances, changed my view on many things.
yeah.
And I think this is very important for leader to change and adapt and adjust, because it's not just that we have to, it's really organically has to happen, because in some ways, of course, when you push the strategy and agenda, you absolutely have to be sure, what you're doing. But this, type of flexibility down the road, how you implement things is very important. And yeah, that's what changed my view. That's for
Interesting.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of risks that we take in business on the revenue, the business model side. There's also risks we take when it comes to our people and culture when you're
Yes.
in uncharted territory. You guys were in an unprecedented type of a situation. And
Yes.
so who knows? Sometimes you've got to dig deep and think, what would I want? What is the human element? What is really needed here? And certainly paying attention to mental health and emotions. I feel like we shy away from that in business. We don't want to admit that people have feelings and mental health. There's a whole stigma also around mental health, anxiety, depression, and y'all went straight for it. You were unafraid to address it head on. It sounds like you were even skeptical about the yoga component, but you saw the results, right?
Yes, and this is not a practical, management type of view, right? It's
Right.
it's a human part of, nature because I know to the deep core that, people in the, better shape, they can do better outcomes, not from the performance perspective, but what we learned also is the focus and concentration. So it is probably less important for people to work 10 hours or 8 hours. It is much more important to work like good 6 hours, a day to present those results. Because remember, all of our work, it's about, software development, which is requires emotional intelligence and resilience. And obviously, if you're constantly distracted, that's bad.
Yeah.
Creativity doesn't come in such environments, probably sporadically, but we need a more systemic approach to this.
Right.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's my recommendation. And we can say that, of course, Ukraine is unprecedented, time and war pressure, but you can compare this probably with many things like,
Mhm.
climate disasters, the uh, woods, anything what we observed this time, unfortunately, right? And just understand this. I mean, be ready, and yeah, that's
Yeah, Cos, I love how y'all were able to just have the conversation around mental health and brain health because if you want people to be creative and they're in a threat or survival state, they literally can't tap that part of their brain. We have to keep
hmm
our brains healthy. And if you're constantly stressed and that creates distraction and it just creates a lot of adrenaline, cortisol in the body, right? And you get into this cycle where if you want research and innovation and people can't tap into their prefrontal cortex, you're not going to get innovation.
hmm
And when all of your employees are in threat and war, you've got to get real creative about and realistic about brain health and brain function.
yes. Reality is that you can have some innovations on the sporadic form. So, when you need some type of momentum and such, threat comes, it really can be. But then the question is, what do you need for your organization? You need a sustainable innovation track, right?
Mhm.
Something that you can constantly innovate on. So, on example of what we experienced, the many innovations happened during the first, 2 months of the invasion,
Mhm.
um, from the drone, implementation program, right, to the actual, funding of those programs, like, um, approach to this and many other things, right? But then there is a question, like you say, like how brain works. The problem is with the accumulated, adrenaline and the cortisol and things, and then you kind of, see this decline, in that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So I'm interested now, and you've kept this company healthy. I'm assuming revenue is
yes,
okay. You've been stable. What do you
yes.
see as this next era? What do you feel like y'all need to focus on with your culture, your leaders, to continue to be successful and continue adapting?
Part of our plan for 2025 and forward, it's that, keep people engaged as much as we can, into the strategic initiatives. So give them freedom. So more freedom than, in normal circumstances, in the good shape. I mean, many books saying that, right? But there's always like corporate rules, and type of things like, KPIs. We drive this, of course, with the any type of, OKRs in our organization, but we feel that much more um, freedom needed on the level of every individual. And that's how we structure this forward. We want to deepen and broaden our health practices. So this is much more, I would say, systemic in like different human nature type of address, from like stretching, to practices, going not just to gym, which is a typical and standard. So that's what we plan for, and yeah, we know we plan more load in on new experimental things. So and especially in the nonprofit world. So like bionic prosthetics. So we did our prototype last year, and now we want to advance this program for people who have this unfortunate circumstances, so veterans, and helping them. So I feel, with my management that more we deepen those relationships, and especially when we cross this overseas, between the United States and Ukraine and Europe, more exchange of culture happens and people feel much more inclusive,
Mhm.
into these processes. So that's what we plan to do and deepen forward. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible, Cos. I'm hearing you say, you guys are really going to continue to double down on the health, mental health aspect, but you're also really doubling down on the innovation.
Mhm.
And at the same time, giving people more and more freedom and autonomy, keeping them in a place where they feel truly in charge of their lives, invested in the company, and emotionally tied to the company. So
Yes.
it's
And what
it's
we
very
learn,
wise. Yeah.
it is, and not, comparison to anything we observe, right? More people have like doing something by their hands. So like this project of the bionic prosthetic was very exciting, for engineers themselves because they not just program in front of the computer, but they actually assemble things.
Okay.
And that's very cool.
Yeah, so you're really creating meaningful work for people.
Yes.
And what a lot of research on resilience tells us that one of the only things that correlates with true resilience is when people can find meaning and purpose amidst the adversity. We tend to be able to overcome things when we're still connected to something that we know is more important than ourselves. We're contributing to something bigger. And that kind of lights our flame and allows us to endure through incredible adversity. So,
Yeah.
I think that everything that you've shared is applicable for any group of people in adversity. You're really shining a spotlight on an intense situation, but the ways that you've adapted and supported your people and been successful through this, I think all executive teams can learn from and
Yeah.
consider how they could implement these things in their companies.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think this core that, be human. Sometimes, in any circumstances, right? We know that, but in difficult circumstances, as I mentioned before, some people making decisions because they have to, right? But you as a company need to stay with them as a human being. So I understand, and just adjust to this situation. Some people leave because they simply, burned out and you cannot do much about it. They just need to rest out. They just need to, walk away and read books and maybe, have a good tea, every every time, they know that. Yeah, but that's I think, very important to be supportive. In this case, we had, you know, um, some of the cases were just people, yeah, they just couldn't handle it,
Right.
and war and relatives and they just said like yeah we need to leave and they said yeah let's just agree on terms how we do that and come back every time anytime you want that so and this is a lot of appreciation about it you set the terms right out of respect and out of the all the payments the company has to do right and that's how it works all of those folks they are in the constant contact with us are
Mm.
there any work that we can help with and this is the healthy condition of the relationship
Yeah.
so
So it sounds like y'all have created something very special through all the adversity you've faced. So can you leave us, Koss, with a word of advice to executives, other executives, senior leaders who face a crisis or a huge adversity or challenge? What has been your North Star through all of this? What would you tell the rest of us when we hit these really trying times?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we are lucky and blessed, to have our deep core of the DNA of the social impact. that was always and will be our North guide and star, that we do much more than we do daily. We help people to change their lives for the better. My recommendation would be, every company in the 21st century to think about what they can do more. What is the legacy will be, not just by the product that you do, for any type of industry, from restaurants, to the transportation, right? But what you will leave, after you in education, in, support of the community, sports, whatever you feel the most, connected with.
Mhm.
So it's not something that, you need to have, as a DNA, you can have it, on the side, but focus on this, because that would organize people around this mission,
Mhm.
right? And helps them to be much more inclusive, because that's, not a surprise, a problem of today after pandemic time, right? Loneliness and
Yeah.
people just sitting at home, watching TV. I mean, this is not healthy. I mean, what is, the responsibility of every company is, people spend with you like majority of their time and majority of their life, right? So engage them into better things. I mean, just get out and just, clean up the streets or whatever you feel, or rebuild some, abandoned houses together. That will be much, better society. So
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. This is a really cool conversation, very meaningful. I learned a lot and I thought I was an expert in resilience. So thank you again for sharing
thank you.
the lessons from the battlefield, really.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and yeah, listening to this experience. And I wish everybody, our listeners to, yeah, get some, out from this conversation. And I hope you like that.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross.